Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Squires, and this is the Couch Riffs Podcast with episode number 120, and my guest, Katie Cole. Katie Cole is an Australian-born singer-songwriter, musician, who moved to LA some years ago. She is, feels like the hardest working musician that I have had on the podcast. It was pretty inspiring to talk to her. And she once she got to LA, she became like a side person player with Glen Campbell, which is amazing. Big fan of Glen Campbell. Then eventually she moved to Nashville, and now she's a touring member of the Smashing Pumpkins. And is constantly releasing original music of her own, which is great. She just released a single called Hands Tied. You should go check that out. There's a link in the description of this podcast, as well as running a great YouTube channel that you can find a link for in the description as well, and doing $1 concerts. And guess what? There's also a link to that in the description of this podcast. She's a great person to talk to, as you know, and especially for me right now at this moment. It was very inspiring to hear someone grinding it out, because that's what, we're all grinding it out. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I do, because it was fucking awesome. All right. If you are enjoying the Couch Riffs Pod, do you understand that? Do you understand me? Do you hear me what I say? If you're enjoying this podcast, you could consider supporting. Your money goes a long way to making this happen. For as little as 99 cents a month, you can support this podcast, as well as the video series, which is always cranking. Always cranking. Man, you don't know. Talk about a grind. Getting 4 to 6 musicians from all over the world to collaborate is a chore. And it's fun. It's amazing. But it takes time. Months, sometimes. Months. But we have some really fun videos coming up for you to hear. So I hope that you enjoy those. If you do and you're feeling generous, please support. There's a link in the description of this. And you can go to anchor.fm. I think we have a Patreon that we're going to start doing, actually. I think it'd be easier to just have everything in one place and create bonus content there. Because, fewer things better. Less things better. More is not always better. Right now, I want to thank folks who are already supporting the podcast. So check it out. These are my peeps. All right. Thank you to Ryan Waters, Hayden Smith, Matt Gabbs. Thank you, Justin Jones. Go check out his guitars. Thank you, Doug Starkovic. Thank you, Deja Colantuono, Rochelle Parker, Chris Smith, Adam Pranica, Soto Rebellos, Dan Hurst, James Pope, S.J. Somerset Sullivan, Mike Lacerda, Ryan Hooper, Ryan Crace, Steve Hall, Jamie McParland, Dan Leary, Geraldine Burnett, Kathy Giordano, Rebecca Pellman, Danny Bland, John Guffey. Thank you, Teresa Morgan. Thank you, Rolla Amplifiers. Go check out their amps. Thank you, Perry Morgan, Paul Hutzler, Justice Gash. And thank you, Mike Todd and Michael Shore, for jumping on board recently. And thank you to River City Guitars. You guys have heard me talk about River City Guitars. It's an awesome little spot in Spokane, Washington. RiverCityGuitars.com. Go check it out. Follow them on social media, especially, because you're going to see things pop up on social media that take a little while to get up onto the website. But they are always out swiping up the good. If you have vintage, used, or generally cool stuff that you would like to sell, consider River City Guitars. All right. You can give them a call at 509-818-7693 or shoot them an email, sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. Every day is a buying day, and they are interested in your cool stuff. All right. Now, every week I pick something off of the website. I put something up before. I don't remember what I did. That's the problem. Sometimes I record these things a week in advance, and sometimes I'm doing it the day before. Anyway, I don't know what I put up yesterday. But today, the pick of the week is a 1942 Martin 517. Now, this is a hot little number. Talk about unique. They only made a couple hundred of these things. A couple hundred. And who knows how many are still in existence. This thing is in great condition. Like any old acoustic, eventually you probably have to give it a neck reset. But for now, you could pluck on this thing and probably... this thing's got plenty of albums and songs left in it. This thing can be had for $32.99 or make them an offer. Why not? They're reasonable folks. RiverCityGuitars.com. Thank you so much to them for their support and for their friendship. They're the best. Now listen, remember the golden rule. You guys know the golden rule. Just treat people the way that you would want them to treat you. You feel like you deserve to be treated with respect, right? Sure you do. So treat people that way. And then, what comes around goes around. That's the flip side of the golden rule, folks. Don't think that it's not. You guys hear my dog back there? He's kind of a dick. Don't be like Mr. Big. Don't be a dick. Hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, how you doing?
You can, good.
Yes.
Let me make sure
It was just one of those weird ones where it asked me like twice to test my audio, and I'm like, okay.
Every time I step up to the computer, I feel like I'm in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and my computer is HAL, and it's just like, sorry, Mike, I can't do that, no matter what you want. How's your day?
Yeah, it's been all right so far. What about you?
Oh, yeah, just fine.
Now, am I loud enough for you? Do you want me to be any louder, or am I good?
I think your level is... Go ahead and speak for me.
No.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Because I've got tons of volume to work with. Whatever you want.
Yeah, great. Hey, first let me say... your new single that comes out tomorrow will be a week old by the time this comes out. Is great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I saw in your notes that you recorded at Blackbird. I don't know if that's a common thing for you, but the first time I made a proper like tourist visit, I'd been through Nashville for work, but when I was like being a tourist, I mean, I drove by that place just to be a creep and see it.
Yes.
A like legendary spot.
Yes. I mean, I've been really lucky to record in a bunch of really sort of iconic places. And that was one of the few places that obviously being in Nashville, you want to record in. But we jammed basically a session of a bunch of songs together, and I've just been releasing them. Like I released a few as an EP, which was my 2018 Things That Break Part 1 EP, and I've just been releasing single after single since, just to kind of spread it out a little bit more. And because people have no attention span, as you know. So it's...
Wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me that people don't have the attention that they had 30 years ago?
Of course not.
Or 3 years ago, they don't.
But yeah, I've been just because I worked out that like if you give people 10 songs to listen to, they'll pick 2 or 3 favorites. If you give people 3 to listen to, they'll pick 1 or 2 favorites. So you kind of... But if you give people 1 song to listen to,
I think that's a fine approach. I mean, yeah, if you give people an album, they will often listen to the first song and go, all right, well, I've heard the record.
Like it's a very different story with really well-established artists. but just knowing where things are at right now, it's just, I don't think people already have no attention span. So it's even worse now that people have been either working from home or just doing more from home. Your whole connection to friends, society, work is all computer or phone. And that's great, obviously, because it makes connectivity so quick and everything accessible, but it's also really tiring, and it wears you, like, you just get worn out and fatigued from technology. So yeah, it's just challenging.
I never thought I'd get fatigued from emailing, but it's
you do.
Man, it is trying.
Yeah, agreed. But thanks for reaching out, and I'll give my friend Corey a shout out that suggested me to you, and I'll have to reach out to Jeff Schroeder as well, just to be like, what's up?
Yeah, Corey came on the show and crushed. What's the Dire Straits Sultans of Swing? Did you see it?
Oh no, I haven't watched it yet. He's so good.
We sat ridiculous. On the couch, single pass, sang it, and he played the guitar, and it's just like,
awesome.
Yeah. He's
awesome.
He's a master. The other, on the topic of attention span, looking at your bio on the website,
yeah,
you start by telling the story of watching your mother bring home a new record, open it up, listen to the album,
yeah,
one side, flip it over, other side, look at the liner notes, read the lyrics, all the things that we used to do. Like, folks just don't do that anymore. But it's
a shame. But like, I suppose I'm lucky. I grew up in a kind of musical family that stuck with me. Like, I can't force that upon anyone else to pay attention to things they don't like, because I'm a musician and all that stuff. So all that, and it makes sense now that I was always interested in knowing, like, who wrote the song, who played on the song, where was it recorded, who mastered it, who engineered. Like, I always wanted to know who did what. And that was kind of passed along to me through my mum reading liner notes and paying attention to the songs that she liked. And I suppose at a young age, making me realize why I liked a song.
Right.
Like, because of all those elements and those people and those places and all that stuff. And I don't think you can expect the average listener. The average listener, I suppose, will just go, I like a song or I don't. And that's about as far as it goes. But there's nothing wrong with that. Someone that isn't an avid sports person isn't going to know all the intricacies of that world either. And that's me.
I wonder if there's some secret key, sort of like some is it Tom, who's the giant man that was the motivational speaker? Tom Robbins? Tony Robbins. Yeah. Tom Robbins is an author?
Or possibly. He's just not I'm sure it's just not a giant motivational speaker.
Yeah, no. If there's some sort of like reverse psychology thing that musicians can do to be like, I don't really care, and then people will pay attention to them and listen to their whole albums.
I wish it was that easy, but it's yeah.
Yeah, absolutely not. The other thing that I saw on your website that snatched my attention, and right before you logged on, I went in because it hit me, and I was like, it was the Dolly Parton quote, right?
Oh yes.
And I was like, oh, wrote both those songs in a year. I swear it was in the same day.
It was, but I didn't want to blow people's minds.
The same. Can you even believe that?
I mean, Dolly Parton is a super talented lady, and a lot of, marketing genius on top of being an incredible songwriter, incredible iconic vocal styling that you can only really attribute to her. But on top of that, knowing her marketing strategy and knowing that she was so much more than all those things. Like, I know she considers herself a songwriter first and all those other things, but she knew exactly who she was and how to market it, and was unforgivingly herself. And that's brilliant.
Yeah, great. Thankfully.
Yes.
Did you start singing like very young?
I suppose I grew up in a really musical family. My dad played piano. My mom was a piano player. My dad was a classical trained vocalist as well. My sister sang, I sang. Like, it wasn't even a conscious decision. It was just like, that's what you do, right?
Right.
And so I sang, obviously just casually with the family and stuff, and in choirs and school and all that stuff. I suppose I became a professional working paid musician at around 15.
Wow.
So it was, I don't know if that's, I mean, that's young to me. I know some people start like, I didn't have like the stage mum thing where she pushes you out front, go do the thing and be amazing, darling, or whatever. I didn't have it. It was me wanting to go out and do that. So I did that as a, part-time job, and it just became more on the weekends while at school. And I suppose it was a natural progression. I'm already doing this. This is what I'm good at, to, then obviously rolls into being a career.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so obviously your family was encouraging for you to pursue that as well.
Yeah, my mom was always encouraging. It was more just like whatever makes you happy. Like that was kind of my mom's MO. It was just making sure me and my sister were happy and that we were doing what we loved. I don't think she wasn't, because she liked music and art and all that stuff didn't mean that, she wasn't overly excited just because we liked it too, but she was just like, oh, it makes you happy and that's what you like doing. And I appreciate that. It made me have to chase it myself and look out for things myself. And I was the one that was driven to go do it, and found my way.
Do you remember any of those early records that she was bringing home? And do you happen to remember the first one that she brought home where you thought to yourself, this is something that I actually really love also?
I was exposed to so much music. Like I can't.
Right.
I mean, a lot of musicians, I'm assuming, have the same story as me, just exposed to a lot of different stuff. But for me, like growing up before my parents split, it was, my dad was all the classical side of things. So there was a lot of opera and classical piano. I mean, my mum had a lot of classical sort of music too, because obviously she played piano, but literally everything from Beethoven and Mozart and Chopin through to Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Donovan and Aretha, and it just went on and on and on and on. I was exposed to so much that it wasn't even like, what's this that I'm listening to? There was literally always something on. And my mum made it, because she's kind of a rock star, I suppose, just her personality. She always made it her MO to put on whether it was just like a new record to listen to or one of her favorite records, literally open up all the windows of her house and like just share it with the neighborhood.
I'm sure the neighbors appreciated that.
Well, that was her thing. And like, I loved that she did that, and that she, as I said, like she would really listen to a record and from start to finish and work out then and there whether she liked it or not, or what she liked, which song. So she may only love 2 songs on a record, but she'd give the whole thing a listen and be like, no, but those are the really good tracks. But I was exposed to so much that I really don't have, like, I remember, there's standout moments of my life when she sat like me and my sister down to watch like Isle of Wight and Woodstock and those concerts. And I would have been like, I don't know, a kid, like 10. Right. So we were introduced to, Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Joni Mitchell, and watched all these sort of performances. And, she'd make you sit through an entire, John McLaughlin guitar solo, and you just like, it was really, really long, and you just be like, but as a kid, like, and it was just because she loved it. But like, I was shown so much stuff that it was challenging at the time to decipher what I liked, because there was so much. I might like a little bit of this song, or like a couple of Janis songs, or a couple of Jimi Hendrix songs, or a couple of Pink Floyd songs. It was so hard to decipher, or John Fogerty, or, there was so much stuff that it all went in, and like I didn't really process till I was sort of a teenager, I suppose, that then you become that sort of balance of, I love doing this and then I hate everything else. Right. So I processed, I suppose, elements of that and found, I suppose, newer versions of things that I liked in that older music. But, so it then became like, well, I like, Stevie Wonder and Aretha, and I also like Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots and, of course, Smashing Pumpkins. Like it sort of became like all these things just made sense to me to listen to together. And like I remember listening to, because I'd still record going, in high school, very, very young, I'd still put things on a cassette player or whatever it was until I got an MP3 player. But like at the mixtapes that I made for myself, when people were listening to top 40 music and friends were listening to very pop sort of music. And that's not to say I didn't like some of that, because I did. But like I remember like stuff that me and my sister were listening to, that she'd share music with me, I'd share music with her, and it was like the Cult, and like I knew that there was not a chance in hell that any of my like friends at school were even remotely interested in that stuff, at being like, whatever I was at the time, like 13. I don't know.
Right.
But it all goes in, and like I'm so appreciative, even though like some of my mum's music drove me mental as a kid, just because she played so much, it's so loud, and some of it I loved and some of it I hated at the time. But like, thank God I got all that stuff in there, and some of that stuff I'll go back to and be like, I can recognize elements of certain artists in newer artists because of my exposure so young. Like it's an instant thing. Oh, that's just a recycled version of that band, or this new band is just borrowing elements of that band. And thank God.
I went to Australia one time, and I was there for like 7 or 10 days for Soundwave Festival.
Oh, okay.
And it was amazing. I had such a great time. Probably my favorite tour I've ever been on. I know that tour dissolved in a ball of fire and controversy, but we got treated great. We got paid.
Yep.
I got nothing but good things to say. But I had this fantasy about showing up there and going to the record stores and getting, a bunch of records that I can't easily find in the States. I definitely wanted to try and find some of the Australian print AC/DC records and the Angels in the States, Angel City, right?
Yeah.
What else should I have on my radar? Of course, Radio Birdman, right? Who the Saints are Australian? Is that correct? Do you know?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. That sounds right.
Who else do I need to be knowing about? Because there was this like, and maybe it was on your radar and maybe not, but there was like this like 70s post-punk thing that almost includes AC/DC in a weird way. Like they're a very minimalist rock and roll band. They defy. Well, I think they defy.
There was obviously rock took such. I mean, it ate the world obviously during the 70s, or the late 70s and early 80s. There was definitely a moment that Australia had. Obviously, there was some bands that broke out, during the 60s as well. But I don't know. It's like we had our own sort of music television show called Countdown in the 70s and 80s that was huge and, exposed Australians to not only just what good Australian artists were around, but it made all the Australian talent seem as important as the imported talent too. Right. Or maybe it wasn't even considered like, whether it was local or not local, it was just, here's great music. There was such you can't say moment, but it was such an era for music that I didn't grow up in the midst of it. I was too young, or I was too young to actually have really been around during that era, but I know what it was because I remember reruns of the television show playing really late at night and stuff like that, and going, oh, that was like an earlier formation of this band, and then it became this other rock band, and these are where these Australian artists came from and have stuck around and become sort of like local heroes. I don't know, so many of those bands, there's, probably half a dozen to a dozen bands from that era that Americans never hear about. Right. Like most Americans don't know who John Farnham is as a vocalist from Australia. And he's literally one of us, like, if you mentioned his name to any Australian, they're like, yep.
Who is that?
Exactly. Go do your research, people of the interwebs. It's he had some breakout hits in the early 80s in Australia, but he's literally got one of the best rock iconic voices of all time. Like he was I like people always say, oh, Journey and blah blah, and I'm like, I didn't grow up with Journey, and people look at me like I'm like literally insane. They give me that look of horror, like you just had. They're like, what? I'm like, I didn't grow up with that because I had John Farnham, and I had earlier versions of another vocalist, Daryl Braithwaite, who was in Sherbet, and like he had sort of like Daryl Braithwaite had sort of the Peter Gabriel voice, and John Farnham sort of had the Steve Perry voice, but not Steve Perry. But he had that sort of foreigner type voice, like that. He's that guy. Right. And like Australians grew up with that as knowing like that's a great voice. And there were a lot of bands that came out of Australia that had, that were breakout, rock musicians from the 80s that had these huge voices, and they obviously never crossed the pond and never made it across the airwaves to America. Really only a handful, like your AC/DC and In Excess and Midnight Oil. Like there's a lot of them, of course, but that's the small sort of nugget of artists that actually made it out of Australia that you guys know about, that we grew up with like a dozen or so more, and maybe a couple of them crossed the pond to the UK, and the UK knows, or parts of Europe know who other artists, that came from Australia are. But sometimes I'm like, I wish you guys knew, but like again, in America, like I listened to it when I first came to the States. I was, I'd be driving around in my rental car before I moved, and I'd be like, listening to the equivalent classic rock stations and going, I've never, like, these are your classic rock songs. Like, I don't know what this song is. I don't know what this song is.
That's
but like,
amazing.
As you start to, and it is a really weird sort of feeling. And you'd have the same sort of instinct too of like, I'm supposed to know what this means. And once you live here and sort of, get your feet wet and move into, a new country and, adapt some of the culture and learn the history to what some of these bands mean to, like, you grew up with them, they're in your blood, like some of these bands. And I'm like, I get that now. And obviously,
right. There's common vernacular based on some lyrics on some of these songs and inside jokes. And
yes,
you had a lot of catch up to do, especially if you're going to hang in a session, even sometimes if someone's like, oh yeah, I'm thinking such and such, like a vibe.
But I think because we're talking about, I hate to use percentages because math is not my strong point. Like that's not what I'm known as. People that are like, oh, she's a singer-songwriter mathematician. No, that's really not my MO. But it's really that extra 25% of music knowledge or music theory about, or encyclopedic knowledge of the history of certain musicians. Like as long as you know the Beatles, Beach Boys, Bowie, Tom Petty, Aretha, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, like as long as you know the basics of like the greats, why they're great, the history of what they changed, what they brought and how it influenced, or maybe, you look at, Otis or even just, going way back to Little Richard and Chuck Berry and how they influenced the Beatles. And so, as long as you understand the basics of just general music and rock and roll and its history, those finer details of artists that had, a handful or a couple of albums that were really iconic in one country and not another, that's a bummer to not know, or to, obviously when somebody's like, no, you gotta go listen to blah, 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 blah. And you go listen and you're like, yeah, I get that. Fair enough. Right. That's great. And like, I'm glad I'm a better person for it. It's a bummer I didn't grow up with it, and it's not part of my like genetic makeup now, but it's in there and I get it, and I can reference it now when other people speak it to me or reference it. I'm like, I know what you're talking about. Right. Or I can think of the equivalent artist in Australia or whatever, or that I know from the UK, because obviously some British artists and so forth didn't quite cross over to America, but they came to Australia. Australia was very much making a lot of hand gestures that will not translate to audio, but just imagine me waving my hands around a lot. I'm making a lot of pie charts with my hands. But like Australia was very much a melting pot for what came out of like the US, what came out of especially the UK. It all came to Australia, and Australia had its own artists, but we kind of got equal parts, if you want to think of like recipes for music.
Right.
Now I'm a chef. I'm changing careers. But we had that, we had those equal, we had like the new romantic stuff, but we also had like the equivalent American version of that, which was very different to the British version. And, it's just it. And then you had the Australian version, which might be Ice House.
Or the church.
Think about, yes, well, yeah, exactly. But do you see what I mean? Like to know, okay, well, America had this, UK had this, Australia had this, and they're all very similar, but there's, very slight, there's a slight vibe variation.
Sure.
Yeah, but I love the fact that I grew up in a country that kind of got a little bit of everything. I feel lucky in that respect.
I think about my visit there all the time. Of course, we just sort of like showed up on the East Coast and made a little smiley face tour all the way over to the West Coast, all along the coastline. And it was great.
Yeah,
I mean, it was, every city there was like San Diego. It was just like, wow.
Oh, if you're taking that East Coast tour, of course, and like East Coast tour, like you're saying it casually, like it's a day trip. As people of the interwebs, Australia is the size of the US, so
it's huge.
It's huge. So it takes a long time to get from A to B. If your A to B is like Brisbane to Melbourne or something like that.
Yeah, every gig was a flight. People of America, look at an atlas.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a continent.
Yes, I now picture people Googling, what is an atlas? Yeah, it's great though. I'm glad that you've seen some of it. It's challenging that I meet so many, like I lived in LA for a period of time, and I obviously live in Nashville now, and people, it's like they hear my accent and I'm used to being constantly interrupted. Where are you from? You're not from here. Right?
They're like, how long have you been from France?
Yeah, of course. And I usually say, I'm from Alabama or something like that when they ask me. I will say something else now just because I'm a jackass. But the next thing of knowing Australia, the people will say it's one of my favorite accents. I've always wanted to go, and I'm like, obviously now is not the ideal time to travel anywhere. It is where we've got, the pandemic of our lifetime, that we're dealing with, and that we're having to sort of reevaluate our life choices and everything around that. But travel is something I've always been super passionate about, and I've been so lucky to travel to the places that I've been to and spend the time, I suppose, learning a little bit of different cultures, because you really can't learn until you're on the ground somewhere else, and then you see it and you're like, oh, and you just do as other people do, and explain to other people what Australia is like. It's like you just go there and people are chill, and people are really kind of, I always think of like just good down to earth people. Like that's who Australians are for the most part. Very generalizing.
It's about the easiest place other than the UK for an American to visit, because we all speak English. It's like there's none of that discomfort of traveling there and thinking to yourself, well, what happens if I go on a day trip and I need to go and get some food? It's not like visiting Cambodia or Laos or something,
No, to Australia, like you don't have that language barrier. It's just Australians abbreviate everything all the time. So you just have to lean in and be like, you get the general idea of what people are saying. I suppose being on stage at a young age, people always tell me I don't have a general Australian accent, because I don't, I suppose. But I've always learned to enunciate and pronounce things a little bit better, because I like to be understood. And if you're on stage, you want to, it's about performance and communication. So it's not having people go, what?
Right. Huh? So you mentioned, I was going to ask you, and then you beat me to it. You alluded to living in LA for a minute, and I was going to ask you, was Nashville your clear and first choice of a place to live when you landed in the States? And I guess I'm wondering, how did you come to be in Nashville? And was it just like, I mean, I'm sure that you were inspired to pursue opportunities that you felt like you couldn't get in Melbourne. Yeah.
Well, I was obviously in Melbourne for, my life
Right.
up until that point. I suppose, doing that, reading the liner notes, et cetera, my first understanding of music and recording and everything was Los Angeles. Everything was in Los Angeles. Everything was, all the recording studios were based in Los Angeles, California. That's where everybody was there.
Right.
Look at all my favorite records, pretty much, with the exception, of course, of the Beatles, were made, dominantly in Los Angeles. So that was somewhere that I was very aware of in the scheme of things. I never thought, I'll just, move countries, like, because you don't wake up generally and go like, I think I'm just gonna move countries.
Right.
You get your shopping list out, things to do today, move countries. But it became a clear option once I started talking back and forth with my now producer, Howard Welling. He actually had reached out to me, and like, I'd been actively pursuing songwriting. I'd written songs for a bunch of people in Australia. I'd done that thing where I'd written for all the equivalent Australian Idol people, and I'd done some stuff myself, released some stuff myself, had some side projects, wrote a lot of dance music, and I feel like I'd already had like some level of a career, but I wasn't really achieving what I wanted to achieve. Wasn't really thinking, I'm in the wrong country, because you just, you're born and you go, this is life.
Right.
Ta-da! That's how it goes. But after, chatting to Howard before I traveled over for my first couple of trips to the US, it was just like, oh crap, this could, this is how things get done. And this, once I actually traveled over to the US for my first trip, it was like recording in Henson and these really iconic studios. And it was like, and my eyes just went boom, like that. That's, again, some more hand actions. My pupils just dilated to like full capacity. And you start to realize, well, not just these are all these liner notes that I'd been reading, these are these places, but this is how a career happens. This is how it starts. These are the places, these are the people. You've read these people's names and these places in liner notes, but this is how it actually happens. So I bet on myself and traveled out again to do some more recording, and then I ended up just moving, because I realized after my second trip that particular year that I was like, this is a real career, like this is real. It's no longer like, one day, Right. It's like, this is real now. This could really happen. So I moved, and so my first trip was, my first sort of my landing point in the US was Los Angeles for all those reasons. And I'd only been in LA for, I guess, a couple of years, and I was off the bat doing a little bit of touring. I was recording with Glen Campbell and doing a little bit of touring with him as well.
Hey, let me push pause for a second. Were you on that record, the cover record that he made?
No, the one after that. But I was in LA at that time around that time when he was making that. But that was a fantastic one.
Oh, do you know Matt Sweeney? I don't know if Matt was on that record after. I think he was on the covers record.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think. I don't think so.
I could be totally wrong, but I swear that Matt played on one of those last two records.
Possibly. I couldn't tell you, but I just know that I sang on the Ghost on the Canvas record.
I fucking love Glen Campbell.
Yeah, he was another one of those artists. Like, I'm okay to like lower my standard of myself by saying, like, I wasn't that familiar. Like, I knew a couple of songs that he'd done, but I didn't know how much he meant to the heart of America. Like, I didn't, and you don't know sometimes until you move somewhere and again do that research, and you go, oh wow, is this song and this song, and he did all that, and then he had a show, and then he did some more of that, and what an exceptional guitar player and obviously session player. But you that's the thing. It's like once you start to sort of go down the rabbit hole, you're like, oh my God, this is what this guy means. And like, all those things made sense. And me working with him and doing more with him, it was just that, oh, wow. Like I didn't understand until I understood.
And you were learning that stuff probably after you had started to work with him?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that probably eased any like potential like nerves that could have come up.
I suppose. I mean, I started to lose my sense of feeling nervous, or I get anxious before I perform, and I'm a weirdo and like all those things. I'm always going to be me, and being super awkward at all the wrong times. Like that's fine. That's who I am. But in terms of being nervous, like I've been performing live just as a performer as my day/night job, for probably 10 years, more than that more than 10 years before I moved to the US, to obviously dealing with celebrities and iconic figures. It's a different thing. I do get that. But all of the stuff was meeting people within the either recording or performance side of things. So it was professional. It wasn't just like, here's this person. Yeah, in the end, it was we're doing this thing together, and seeing his expertise in me contributing some level of my expertise. I suppose I wasn't overwhelmed. It wasn't like, hi, welcome to America, go do everything right now. It was I was eased into it, and I had a history of knowing the stuff I'm good at, I suppose, versus So, but yes, he was always incredible, and he was incredible to me. Lovely guy and super talented, and
What a guitar player too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't know what a talented picker he was.
Nope, they don't. A lot of people really don't know, just because when you've got a voice like that, I mean, it's hard to get past that, right?
Right. Well, people don't know what a guitar player Jeff Buckley was either, really.
Yeah, that's a good point. And same, I didn't clock so much even with Aretha Franklin until I watched. Did you see the Amazing Grace documentary for her?
No.
You should. Yeah, you should.
It
was a documentary that was filmed in the 60s. It was a two-day concert that was filmed at like one of her old Baptist churches, and they couldn't sync the audio and the video together. It took them decades to have the technology to actually put this thing together, because it was all filmed and put together, and then it was just kind of basically left on the cutting room floor because they couldn't sync it all because it was just too much content. But watching her play piano, it was like, oh my God, I had no idea that she was such an incredible piano player. When you've got that voice, you don't think about all the other things that somebody's capable of. You just go, oh. Right. That's worth a watch though, if you get a chance to see it. Fantastic documentary.
I'm gonna listen back to this and remember, and then do that. You know what I need to do? I need to start making. I need to be more than a semi-professional. I need to aspire to greater heights.
Yes, get rid of that hyphen. No, you're doing great. There's now that we have more access to information, documentaries, music, people, places. We have access to everything thanks to the internet. That again, that's part of that information fatigue and technology fatigue that we have. You can't see everything, you can't learn everything, but it's that list of priorities, Right. But if you get a chance to see something, or you want to go watch a documentary, that's definitely a good one. It was very inspiring. On
the list, what were the other early things that you started doing there in LA when you landed?
I had to sort of do the thing where you start from scratch as a live performer and build up your core fan base, because most people build a fan base over a period of time from friends, family, extended family, friends, and it just, it builds that way. But, moving to LA and going, cool. Right. It took me a long time to sort of build that up and, to be playing, clubs like Hotel Cafe and Room 5 before it shut down. I loved that place. But I was still writing stuff and syncing some stuff to TV and film. I got a couple of good placements here and there. And, I just built my sort of, I don't know, my network of people and professionals. I was hosting a songwriter night at another little club in LA. And I don't know, just building things up. But I was still feeling early on that I hadn't, I don't know, not necessarily exhausted all my avenues, but I was feeling like that songwriter part of me. I've always been, songwriter / artist / 47 other things.
Mathematician,
cook. Chef.
Yeah, chef.
All those things. Yes. And I started to get that itch of, songwriter Nashville. And I didn't really know too much about Nashville being in Australia. Like I didn't even really peg that I was an Americana artist, even when I was in Australia, because it was still sort of pop rock, singer-songwriter. And my first couple of LA EPs were still sort of on that cusp of pop rock, singer-songwriter, and a couple of songs that swayed more into the, what I now term as Americana. But again, like these are all just words. Because if you go into iTunes or anything like that, you'll see that Fleetwood Mac is listed as rock. So,
right.
Terms change. We understand things in different ways. But I started to feel like, I need to do more of the songwriter thing, and being around, Glen Campbell, and I got lucky enough to have a track that. I'm skipping forward a little bit, but Chris Christopherson, I have a relationship there with him featuring on one of my songs on my 2014 album. But I started to feel that songwriters like him. I'll get back to that. I'll go forward back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also do sound effects, obviously, because I'm, another one of my excellent hyphens. I took a trip out to Nashville. I had a couple of friends that were based there, and just thought, what's the harm in doing a trip and making some contacts there? And I wrote a bunch of songs with a bunch of people, played a bunch of impromptu gigs, a couple that I scheduled ahead of time. And by the end of my first trip there, I had hosted a songwriter night. And people were looking at me going, how many times, how often do you come to Nashville? I'm like, literally, this is my first trip. And it didn't twig with me that I had a connection there with Nashville and that I should have been paying a bit more attention. It just seemed, it was an effortless first trip, and subsequent trips after that seemed quite easy too. I made a lot of good friends. I, met a lot of really good people, and there's just definitely a sense of inclusiveness and community there that doesn't exist so much in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, might have tight-knit groups of smaller groups of people, but never felt that sort of people wanting to help you so much.
Right.
Not that not that you should expect such, and that's not really how any sort of creative field works. Most creative fields, it's like, go do the thing that you're good at and people will come to you, or go provide a service and create some worth for it and people, and show it to people, share it with people, and other people will share it with other people, and so forth. But I definitely felt like being brought into this group or that group while I was in Nashville for those first couple of trips. And obviously came back to LA and started doing more recording. I did some crowdfunding for that 2014 record that I mentioned. It was called Lay It All Down. Did crowdfunding for that, and I think I started that in 2011 or 2012, the crowdfunding for that. It was successful, and it was my first attempt at that. And, you don't know when you do crowdfunding, yeah. You're like, this is either going to be great or terrible. It's going to be one or the other, and I don't know which one it's going to be. Let's flip that coin. Blink.
It's really hard because you have the expectation that, I want to achieve my goal. And then you have so much of your, maybe so much of your ego is wrapped up in it, right? And your
yes.
Your sense of self-worth, like there's so much wrapped up in, will people support me? And
Very,
if they
very
don't,
much.
you're like, well, what the fuck, man?
Well, I had a few sort of runs on the board again, having that association with Glen Campbell. I had worked with a radio plugger based in the UK and had a couple of songs playlisted and played on BBC Radio 2 there, which is basically national radio there. And being an unsigned independent artist and having songs go, like quote unquote, just go and actually work there, I booked myself a trip out there and a couple of acoustic shows and just went and played. Had an interview on radio there as well with one of the co-hosts of BBC Radio 2 at the time. And it was, I felt like I started building something already. So for me to launch a crowdfunding thing, I was rolling the dice, but I was also rolling the dice based on, well, I've had some success in America building something, or starting to build something, I should say. And in the UK, they're aware of who I am and think I'm a national radio person and think I'm successful and don't know that I'm like, cool, buying groceries is hard.
Yeah.
But those are the things that you don't share on social media. You share the best part of the situation if possible. And, that's what, I've learned to do that. Not so much taking a note out of, Dolly Parton's book, but it's just like marketing is something you have to understand as an artist, that you are a public figure, and you've got to know that if you're not controlling the image you put out there, who is? But I started to have some success with what I was doing. The crowdfunding thing was a success. So I put out this album, had a few more singles that worked on UK radio, which was great. Nothing that went as great as previous singles, but that's just what was happening with the market there, and the way that radio format had changed slightly, yada, yada, yada. My producer asked me at that time, I hadn't moved to Nashville yet, but was like, hey, Billy Corgan wants to know if you want to open up a show. And this was 2014. I consider myself to be an Americana artist, and Billy Corgan is a rock alternative icon, god person, and you just go, yeah, like, you don't, part of you is trying to process, does that even make sense? They are going to, like, the fans are going to hate me. Like, you process all these things all at once, but you go, no, you just say yes. And then you work out how to do that as you go. So did that show, definitely garnered some new fans. And obviously Billy got a sense of what I'm about. Like, he already knew what I sort of did via our mutual producer association, because Howard's been a long time person that has worked with the Pumpkins since 2000, since the Machina and Adore era. So they trust him and so forth, and knowing that I can do a thing. So, having me open up a show isn't just like some random girl going, hi, I
found her on MySpace.
Yeah. Woo! Any of you guys like pop? No. So I had a good show, and garnered some immediate fans that got, once you strip a song back to sort of acoustic and that sort of format, people, you don't hear so much a genre, you hear a song and you work out whether you like the song. And then seeing someone perform, it's like, do I like the song? Do I like the person? Do I like the personality? And all those things sort of blend together. And that's when fans go, yup, or,
right.
And I definitely got some new fans along the way. And that's when the following year was the first leg of the In Plain Song Smashing Pumpkins tour. It was an acoustic electro evening. I believe that's how it was billed, acoustic electro evening. And he asked me if I wanted to open up that tour. And of course I was just like, yep.
Yep.
Of course. Let me check my count. Yep.
Can't believe it took you this long to ask.
I thought it was a really interesting idea to build something as sort of acoustic but sort of electronic, some backing stuff, some acoustic stuff. So that tour was locked in, and I was like, oh, this is I should basically have my shit together. So I had all my merch and I was ready to go and was like, cool. So and then it became, do you also want to play some bass on this tour? And I'm like, yep.
That's the thing is, yes should be the answer to
Yes.
nearly every question, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose I know most of what I can do. Well, no, most of what I can't do. And, my my understanding at the time was, well, bass is 2 less strings than guitar, so I can do that. Yeah, made sense to me. So that tour was really where I was introduced to a whole other camp of, obviously, Billy and Jeff Schroeder was on that tour, and it was me. Yeah, it was me, Jeff, and Billy. And originally he was going to have a drummer come on board for that, but it ended up just being a 3-piece for that first tour in 2015 and me opening. And I I did my set, went out to the merch booth and waved at fans and signed some stuff and took photos, and then came back and played, whatever the songs I played with them, and got to know Billy a lot more, and got to know Jeff a lot more, and obviously see what they do, and just watch the musicianship of something that, wasn't, I mean, some of the tracks for that early tour were, there were a couple of backing tracks on a couple of the songs, but there was a good portion that were just them doing their thing and just watching musicians just be great in front of you. So that was very awe-inspiring to see, and to watch scaled back versions of some of these really iconic songs that I grew up. Some of them I played in cover bands and was, awesome.
Right.
So it was interesting to cross those.
Did the tour go to Australia?
Lines. No, it was the first tour was very local. It was a small, it was basically a testing the waters sort of tour. Right. So it was only, I think it was 8 or 10 shows, the first leg of this tour. And then it was like, oh, this works. Let's do more. So once they locked in that they were doing another leg of this tour, but on a bigger scale, which was going to be the following year, 2016. I mean, meanwhile, I'm still doing my music. I'm recording, I'm putting out videos, I'm shooting what I'm doing. I think I would have just moved to Nashville, because I moved to Nashville at the end of 2015. So that would have been after that tour I moved to Nashville. And was like, woo. Yeah, that was exactly what happened.
So, let me ask you this. How long were you in LA then?
I was there for, I don't know, like 5 years.
It's a good spell of time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I felt like I got a good understanding of the city and what it's really great at. And no, but I love Los Angeles. I got nothing but great things to say about it. I met some great people. Still have some good friends that are from there. It just was that time of like, well, it's time for a change. And, I learned once you move countries, your anchor doesn't seem so heavy anymore.
Right. I like that.
So you feel free to use that. Made up on the spot. Trademarked.
Bumper sticker.
It's very accurate to put it like that. You realize all that stuff that you have, that stuff that you've got doesn't mean that much. Whatever you can fit into a suitcase and a half is plenty.
Anyone that's ever been on tour knows that, right?
Exactly. Once you get home from tour, you're like, what's all this? Oh, there's more jackets? Oh, okay. Fair
Before
enough.
we go on to more arriving in Nashville, let me ask you this. Yeah. How much do you tour with? Because I used to tour with a big rolling bag and a backpack and a small day bag, like a messenger bag or something. The last 3 or 4 tours that I did it all with a small, with basically what a little kid takes to school.
Yeah.
Like a small backpack, because I got, I could take an iPad, no laptop. I would have my phone. Like already, I don't have a ton of electronics that I used to travel with, right? Mm-hmm. Like 3 t-shirts, 3 pair of underwear, 3 pair of socks, two pair of pants. I mean, it was packed, but that was it. And I hand washed everything every night.
Yeah.
And it was glorious. It was very freeing.
Yes. That is definitely one way to tour. And if you're and I'm not playing the gender card, but if you're a guy, it is so much easier to do it like that.
Sure.
Because women have stuff. We have makeup and hair dryers and curling irons and just stuff. But women also have shoes, and then you're like, do I get this? I ended up, for the most part, I'll take like a medium to large roller bag and a day bag where I'll fit everything in that, which like usually like a small laptop, headphones, wallet, phone, Headphones is important because like I'll always bring good headphones with me on the road, because you never know if you have to listen to a mix or do some, like I prepare in advance. Yeah, I prepare in advance and always take something good with me.
My wife would probably have 3 roller bags. She would have 1 roller bag full of leather jackets.
Well, you work that out very quickly, that once you're going from bus to airport or airport to airport or country to country, you just want 1 roller bag, and a good one that where the wheels aren't sort of all like a shopping cart trolley. You want one that's got good wheels. I mean, I remember the last, when was it? The last big tour, 2 tours ago with the Pumpkins, my roller bag, like literally first stop to be rehearsing in one of the arenas. And like I get my suitcase back from the airport conveyor belt, and like the wheel is buggered. So we were luckily staying in that city for a couple of days. I literally ordered a new suitcase online from Amazon that got there, and I was like, thank God. You start a tour with like a buggered suitcase. Good luck with you. Suitcase, 1 bag. That's as much. You don't need anything else, because you can always downgrade what you've got and put it in, like if you're doing big touring, into wardrobe carts or other stuff where you're not carrying it. It's just on the road. If it's me doing my stuff, I might take less. But if it's me doing a bigger production thing, I'll take more, because especially if I'm doing my shows as well as Pumpkins shows, I need outfits for me, not just show outfits. I guess it's a really long answer.
No, that's a perfect answer. Do you ever, that didn't even occur to me, outside of opening the actual Pumpkins shows, do you ever play side shows on days off if you guys are not en route or traveling?
I've tried to organize some things, but often the schedule has been like, for instance, the second big tour, where I was still playing bass with the band, and Jimmy Chamberlain was brought back to play drums, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a big tour.
What a monster.
So and James Ihar came back to play a couple of those shows too, because he played New York, LA, Chicago. So he played four of those shows, because there were 2 in New York. And that was 2016. So my mind went, okay, eyes are back on me. I have a huge opportunity with this band. I'm going to do a great job. But aside from that, how do I build my career? So there's 2 things you can do to obviously build your career, which is doing live shows or do something else to garner attention. And I did another crowdfunding thing. At the time, like I was, a few shows into the tour, and was like, you do something. Because it was like, I have to do something. So I started putting together my crowdfunding video in between shows, late night shooting in hotels. Like I was literally shooting stuff at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and in hotel rooms, like editing it together.
Throwing TVs out pitch. The window and stuff like that. That kind of a hotel
totally.
activity.
No, but putting together my pitch video, what I was going to do, my graphics, all the rewards for all those things, and put it live. And I think it was before the end of the tour, it was successfully funded, and it was like, that's really good use of your time. If I'd had more time, because often to schedule live shows, you're booking a couple months out, and I don't think I've received any of my full itineraries for where I am, what I'm doing, where I have days off most of the touring that I've done with the Pumpkins has been very back to back. It's not like some tours that might be 3 days, 4 days on, 3 days off, or things like that.
Yeah.
These shows are literally like, 3 days on, 1 day off, and it's a travel day, or 4 days on, 1 day off, and it's a travel day. Like it's slammed.
Yeah.
So to not know what my schedule was, I couldn't plan ahead. And even when I did know what it was, okay, well, it's a day off technically in Idaho somewhere, but it's also a travel day. So when do I get in? So
right.
I'd rather not. I worked out early on during that tour, you can't really do side gigs on the road because you don't have the time you think you do. And even if you do have the time, you're in the wrong city. Not the wrong city, but you may not be in a city that you have that you want to play in, or that
right.
you're familiar with, or the hotel you're staying at is somewhere midway between these two cities that you're playing in. And that's just what the route
or whatever.
Well, that's just but that's where the route is. The route says, okay, well, we're going to stay here because then we're only, there's a much nicer hotel in this place. Let's stay here. And you're like, okay, I don't know. I just go, okay, and get on the bus and get off the bus and go, hey. But I did work out you have to do something to engage your fans, build new fans, and show people or showcase your personality. As I was saying, like as a performer, you show what you do, who you are, and your association to the thing that, I have fans, and some fans will just learn who I am, but to new fans, if I'm doing a Pumpkins thing, they don't know what I do. They just
right.
go, oh, that's that girl that does those things. But for me to be like, I have to be gracious about the way that I introduce what else I do, because you don't want to assume that people care, because they don't.
Right.
Some people are music lovers and love all sorts of music, like yourself, like me. Some people just love everything, but some people really just love a couple of bands or something within the walls of this genre. And I'm very respectful to that. Not, again, like I was saying before, just because that's my thing with music and I love all these things, I don't expect everyone else to be like me. They're not like me. They've got other things that they're passionate about that I probably don't understand either. But
like video games.
Exactly, like video games, exactly. But to showcase what I do to people in an inviting and engaging way, and I was saying to you, like with the PR, with Dolly, Parton and things like that, it's like working out how you showcase that in a friendly sense, so it doesn't look like you're like, hey guys, I'm not that person. I like to be genuine and just be myself, but you have to work out that stuff doesn't naturally, like, unless you capture those moments of yourself with your own camera while you're on tour, or have someone else take photos or video of you while you're on tour to share with other people, to show you in a candid fashion, so that people can share with you your experiences and your personality in those moments, to go, oh, that's what she's about.
Right.
And learn, like, be there with you. I learned started to learn during that early second tour that's really important, to take people along for that ride, because I still felt like I was stepping onto that stage with that band, playing those shows, but sort of still felt like not a tourist, but like I was having that experience with those fans too. Like, so right. I was like how did I get here? What's happening?
I love how proactive you are in everything. And it doesn't seem like you have wasted any time being bored this year, which is, I have a real pet peeve with people who are bored. Probably because I was a person, probably when I was younger, I definitely was this person. I was the person who, because I grew up in the night, like I was 21 in 1993, so, or 1992. So for me, there, it was like this kind of a slacker. Don't try too hard because you don't want to seem like you're trying too hard. And then, but it just, that's a tired way to go about things. And there's a good reason why that died, because, even the people that sort of painted painted that on didn't really live that. Like, if you want to be a musician and have a career, totally okay to try and make sure people hear it. Like, no one's going to come kick your door down and tell you what to do. Right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely didn't fall into a career with music, because you can't do that. You can't, unless you're related to someone extremely famous or something.
Right.
I mean, my youngest memories of music were like, I can't afford a computer. I've got a mini disc recorder. I'm just going to make songs on that. And it was terrible, but that's what I had. So you work out that, I mean, trying is a great word, because you sort of try your way through various situations to work out what you're good at, what you're not good at, and your patience. You work out how much you can handle of yourself. And when things are really hard and things take a really long time, like the amount of times that I'd sat through, I'd have to record an entire tambourine take or an entire take of something, because it's mini disc it's not, you can't just loop something. I didn't have that. It takes time to flash out an idea that you've got and to build it, and to then at the end of the thing, when you've done it and you've got the song, to be like, I don't really like that song. But you have to go to all those lengths to go, it was worth it still. I've had opportunities given to me with, obviously with the Pumpkins and with working with Glen Campbell, and my producer, I forgot to backtrack to Chris Christopherson, but that session came about because Howard Willing was engineering a session for Chris Christopherson with producer Don Was, and it was like, if he's got time free to record a background vocal for your song, we're going to try and fit it in. It may not happen. I just got that, like, I got the very stressed notion of like, this may not happen. Prepare yourself.
Right.
But it did happen. His voice is on my song, and I wasn't there to witness the session, but I know that he liked the song. I've got a snap that was sent through to me of him holding the lyric sheet, which I'll, obviously keep forever. But I've had opportunities like that, like where it's been like that miraculous, the heavens part and something, actually transpires and it happens. I've had opportunities where, well, do you want to play bass with the Pumpkins? Yes, because he knew, Billy, and knew who I was, and, became as this organic sort of relationship of opening up for a show. We'll also play bass for a show. And for me to transfer over to keyboards, it's like, he's aware of, I'm a capable musician. He knows that he can throw stuff at me. I'm a vocalist, and I do things live that I'm not sure other vocalists have done, where I'm really supportive of what he's doing vocally, and I follow through his performance with what I'm doing, and I'm adding, those harmonies on the songs that may have existed or may not have existed, but I'm elevating that, performance to a different level. And he's encouraging of that and appreciates that. And obviously he's an incredible vocalist, and I'm very lucky, to have done those things, but I have been given opportunities, but I've worked out I wouldn't be there or continue to be somewhere if I still wasn't good at what I do. And
of course,
no, but it's taken me so long to get to that point to go,
right.
Is this all luck? Is this all this thing? And it's like, yes, it is, but it's still, these musicians, you can't say people like the Smashing Pumpkins. There's no one like the Smashing Pumpkins, right. But bands that have built their careers over decades, that have these, iconic, legendary statuses for what they've achieved, can afford to extend their experience to any length of musicians and people to work with. They can work with whoever they want. If they're choosing to work with me, I've got to look at that and go, well, there's a reason still. So I'm grateful, very, very grateful that I've been brought into that camp and that fans know who I am. And I've been on these huge tours now, and in between that In Plain Song tour and the Shiny No So Bright tour, which was 2018, I continued to write and record, and that's when I started to track the EP, Things That Break Part 1, and subsequent songs. Like, I tracked a bunch of songs in that studio with all those incredible musicians. And, I realized, okay, well, after I put out the first EP, which I was lucky enough to sell, I didn't sell that many, but I was lucky enough to sell some of the first EP from those sessions during the Shiny and Oh So Bright arena tour. So I had friends that were like taking photos of themselves like in the merch area with like, my little EP.
You had your EP there at the Pumpkins merch?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I know. Like,
that's
it was
really cool that he.
It was cool. It was cool that they asked if I wanted to do that, and I was like, yes. And again, like, their fans don't know. They know, some of them know who I am, and some of the hardcore fans went out and bought it there and whatnot. But it was just an exciting moment for me to have, to be like, my stuff's at, Madison Square Garden or whatever.
Even just, oh my God, the opportunity to have it. I mean, this is lost on a lot of people, I think, but even just to have the CD sitting in a place next to the things that say Smashing Pumpkins on them.
Yeah. My merch touched their merch. Right? Oh my God.
Well, I mean, not so much for you. I mean, it's great for you, but just to have the association where people see that, and then they see or hear your name again later, and then it just, keeps happening.
Yeah. It was definitely, a huge, there's just no words for it. Like, I've had so many amazing things happen that I forget until I go back through. Like, I remember all the things that happened to me, and like literally every experience of stepping onto pretty much every stage and doing these things that I've done that, I never thought I would do some of the things that I've done. First of all, who thinks, oh, I'm just going to move countries? Then, oh, I'm just going to work with this incredible producer. Oh, I'm just going to work with Glen Campbell. Oh, I'm just going to tour with the Pumpkins. Oh, I'm going to do a solo tour with Billy Corgan in Europe. Oh, I'm going to play this place. Oh, I'm going to go visit this. Nobody wakes up one day and goes, I'm just going to do all that stuff. But I've done so many things that I never thought I would do, that you started to sort of work it out. I just started to say yes to the things that were asked of me that I didn't know at first if I could achieve, but I'm always of that mindset of, well, I'm pretty sure I can, and I'll work it out. Like, I've always been of that mindset of, I'm really quite a hard worker, and I'll work out what else I need to learn. If I don't know all the things I think I need to learn, or the things I need to know, I'll go work out what they are. Like, even down to, graphics. Well, I need to do this and this. I need to put this video together. I need to create this. I need to do artwork. How do I do all this stuff? Well, I'll just learn. That's me. That's me in a nutshell. If I don't know quite how to do something, I'll work it out, or I'll find someone else that can help me, at least point me in the right direction. But if I'm pretty sure I can do something, yes, I'm very lucky. But there's a lot of hard work that comes with it, and there's been a lot of times where people, I know other bandmates are on the road having a day off and having a lie-in and whatnot, and I'm plugging away, because I need to update like all the banners on all my websites because a new single's coming out to correlate with this. That's me. I'm doing that because I have to. It's that if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it. Right. And you have to keep doing all those things until somebody else comes along, and until they do, you have to. I try to approach everything that I do like it's on a competitive level. So everything I do, whether it's putting out videos or releasing this music, I want people to have the experience that it's not like, oh, some independent. It's good for an independent. I don't ever want that. It's good for, it's good for her, or it's good for that. I want it to be, no, it's just really good, or it's great. It's just great. For whatever reason, it's just great. It's not like, oh, it's good for, she made it herself. I never want people to think of things like that. I just want people to have that experience of like, that's great. I stumbled across this and it's great. I'm coming back again to listen to this song, or I found you because of this cover version you did of some weird song 5 years ago or whatever, and I found your music. And like, I'll watch on YouTube those sort of natural, technology connectors that we all sort of do. I stumbled across this video, this cover of whatever, and then that led me to this song, and I'll watch the comments. Oh, I found this because of that. And then I'll see another comment come through of like, wow, this song's great, and subscribe, and that's how I try to treat it. Like, if you found me because I'm related to Glen Campbell or whatever it is, that's great. If you found me because you saw me play some show with Billy, or whether it's with the Pumpkins, or you heard that I did background vocals for, the new record. Like, I don't care how you stumbled across what I do. As long as you did that and you found me on one of these social networks, you'll find everything else that I do. And that's sort of the key. Keep everything updated, be aware of what you're doing, and try to share a little bit of what you do with everybody.
It is a grind.
Yeah.
I put out 2 podcasts a week, and I don't know how there are people who do more than that. And I have a full-time job, so to do more than this, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anything creative is definitely a grind, and I don't know who said it or whether I'm misquoting somebody and bastardizing some incredible quote in history, but like it is that thing of like, if you can make what you do look easy, then you're probably doing it right, and that's kind of the thing. I don't show, like, depending on the road, if I'm exhausted or I'm having a bad day, or volunteering at some hospital, occasionally I'll take, a photo of something like that just to share it, like that other side of what I do. But most of the time I don't show people like all the blood, sweat and tears that goes into what we do, because everybody's having a hard day. Everybody's got their own sort of grind that they're dealing with and all that stuff. And ours is just a totally different level, because we're grinding like the tears of our creation and trying to make it into something. Like, we're just like, please be great. We're doing that, and it is definitely a different type of job to do anything that is a level of art or something that involves inspiring others or inciting communication and motivation in people. Like, you can't fake it.
Yeah.
You can't. It's like you couldn't fake a podcast. You couldn't fake an interesting conversation with somebody, or turn a guest that isn't giving you much information into something that's intriguing and engaging to listen to, or at least re-listen. You'd just be like, bleh.
You're telling Noah about the flood right now, lady.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you, so when you're playing with the Pumpkins, you're playing probably on the small side, you're playing theaters, and on the large side, arenas.
Arenas or festivals, which were in Europe. That was the biggest so far.
Those festivals are great.
Crazy.
Yeah. When you transition home and you're doing your own shows, you're doing clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Is there ever like a whiplash moment where you're like, oh, right, I can step off the stage, and grab my drink off of the table sitting next to me?
No. It's very strange to say that and be that quick to respond, but it's like when I'm in touring mode with the Smashing Pumpkins. Okay, here's a really good example. Once upon a time last year, pre-pandemic, so PP, pre-pandemic, we had rehearsed for a couple of months to do the European tour, which was shows and festivals, like these big festivals that were like 50 to 100,000 people, no biggie. We'd been rehearsing. First show of the tour was Oslo, and the opening band pulled out because the lead singer got blood poisoning. Super not fun, I'm assuming.
Blood poisoning?
Yeah.
Wow.
The more important factor is I get the knock on my dressing room door at 4:30 in the afternoon of that day. Do you want to open up the show? After having literally only been in Smashing Pumpkins mode for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And like, it's not like you don't remember your own songs, but if you're in a certain gear, you're in a certain gear.
Of course. And
until you've done a few shows, then you sort of relax out of that. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm cool. because you just have to do that thing where you got to know this is an ebb and flow of certain shows, that maybe a song changes here and there and then it gets leveled out and that's the way the show's going to go. But I get the knock on my door and I'm like, okay. And I said to the tour manager, Doug, I'm like, okay, give me an hour. Let me go through my songs and actually work out if I know them or not.
You didn't automatically say yes.
No, I said, but just give me an hour. I just, it wasn't the automatic yes, because there was a lot at stake. There's a lot of work that had gone into this show leading up to it. I wanted to be sure, really sure. And I thought, I've got time, as in an hour, to work this out. I can take that hour. That's okay. If I don't open the show, literally no one's opening the show. It wasn't a matter of, well, we'll get someone. Who else are you getting? You're getting me. So I went through my songs and was like, oh, I'm cool. Went and did a sound check, half an hour after that, and was like, cool, it's cool. So went out there and played to whatever it was, 7,000 to 10,000 people in the place, and was like, and then switched back into my gear for the first show of the tour. But that was definitely one of those moments of how do you change gears. Now that was changing gears. That was changing gears on one level. Now that was changing gears to go back to what I do as an artist. And what I do as an artist is, to me, so much easier. Like, I have to sing a lot harder, play a lot harder. There's a lot more stuff to remember because I'm performing and playing at the same time. But me changing back into gears to play Katie Cole music is easier than it is to play Pumpkin stuff. Then to get home and play my shows, it's easier still. I just go back into my own shoes. It's never a matter of, I don't play, and this is the long-winded version of the story. I'm really good at being long-winded. You might have worked that out.
Yeah, it's great.
Hi, here's the story that lasts for 10 minutes.
Best kind of guest.
No, not really, because sometimes my stories just end and don't have a point, which is, then I usually just say it's because I'm a girl. I don't have to have a point. I just talk until I stop talking. But I played that show, switched back into mode of doing Pumpkin stuff, and was like, cool, okay, I can do that. And it was just another validation of just like, you said yes to the right thing. You were sure, you didn't sort of mess it up. You're fine. You're prepared. You know what you're doing. That's fine. When I change back into just doing my shows, it is just unbelievably easy because I'm the boss and I'm steering the ship. I know where I'm going with things. I can change things up if I want to as I go along. Whereas it's a very rigid format, playing with a band and you're playing these songs for the entire tour. You may change, drop a song, add a song. Sometimes the band will do that. During rehearsal, we'll add a song, and it's like, cool. Like, good example of that is on the 2016 tour. And you can Google this if you want, because it's hilarious.
I'm going to fact check
I was in my dressing room, and I was hearing like the band. I heard that they started to, like, I heard music, and usually like I'll get the knock on the door when we're doing sound check, but I just heard noise and it was well before sound check time. So I was like, so I just let it go and go and go. And then I was like, I still felt like it was the same song that just kept going for like 20 minutes. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going down to the stage now, even though it's not sound check time. Went down to the stage, and on that In Plain Song tour, part 2, Sierra Swan, another singer-songwriter, she was playing keys for the majority of that tour, and I was playing bass. And she was on bass because she also plays bass as well. She was playing bass, and they were playing this, I think we're in Dallas at the time. They were playing ZZ Top, Tush. And like Sierra had this look on her face of like, she's like, because they'd been there literally going over the song and over the song. And it's clearly wasn't like, everybody loves ZZ Top, but it clearly wasn't her jam. And she'd just been playing the same song. Whereas I could see Billy and Jimmy and like everyone else was like, yeah, like they were totally digging it, totally digging the riff and just getting right into it. So Sierra's like, do you want the bass? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And so she hands it back over to me. And literally like from within 5 minutes of me playing a bit of the riff and working out where it was and all that stuff, Billy's like, walks over to me with the lyrics. Do you want to sing it? And I'm like, all right. And so like I didn't know exactly. I literally went on like memory of the song, and like I'm sure my phrasing was off and whatnot.
Is this one of those bands? Is ZZ Top one of those American bands?
No, they definitely crossed the
Okay.
pond. It's okay. Australia isn't that uncouth. Yeah, and then we got electricity. No, but it was one of those moments of here's the lyrics. Do you want to sing the song? We literally went through the song like twice, and it's like great, and then they moved on. And I ended up singing it that night. So you can Google it. People of the interweb, you can Google that song. It's on YouTube somewhere.
I'll do just
that. And you can know that I'm literally reading the lyrics going, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I do, but I don't really know what I'm doing.
I mean, that is a pretty bold move to cover ZZ Top in Texas, because when ZZ Top toured America opening for the Rolling Stones, when they got to Texas, the Rolling Stones opened for ZZ Top.
Whoa.
That's pretty crazy, right?
That's rad.
That's a pretty. I like the boldness of that move to do ZZ Top.
Oh, the crowd loved it, because in the lyrics of that song, it's like Dallas, Texas, Hollywood,
right?
And the crowd was like, woo, when I sang those lyrics. But this is obviously the long-winded story. But again, I swear it has a point. It came around to the fact that I know when to say yes to something. I know when to change gears, and I'll give it a try. Like I'll give anything a try. If I can't do it, I can't do it. But most of the time, if I feel like an inkling, I'm comfortable with changing gears and trying this other thing or stepping back into my shoes and whatever. And like we went from another quick example of that before I, talk this podcast out of existence. on the European tour that we went on last year, we did show festival. They were kind of broken up between like our show and like slotting into the festival format. So sometimes it might have been like 4 shows, and then we do 2 festival shows, then back to doing like another theater show, whatever it was that we were doing. So it was quite it was a little bit jarring just as a musician, because it wasn't the same thing and showing up and it's the same sound check. Sometimes it was like we get an ample sound check, and then the next one it's like you have no sound check. You just get a check in your ears if things are on, and you're on.
Right.
That's it. After a few of those shows in Europe, there was a 2-week gap where the band and crew and everyone went on vacation for 2 weeks, except me and Billy, because Billy was doing a solo European tour and I was opening up those shows for him. So we changed. It was again that thing of, we have literally a day off that's a travel day, and then I'm gearing back into doing my stuff. So it was that, I have to get back into my headspace of doing that. Okay, so I did that.
So you're opening and accompanying.
Well, I was opening, and I only accompanied Billy on vocals on a couple of songs that he wanted me to, because he was basically doing a push for his new record at the time, which was Cotillions, his solo record, which I sang 6 or 7 songs on. So my vocals, I was familiar with the songs, but until you go back and relearn songs, then you're like, how's that go? I don't know. I'm one of those people. I have to kind of fill my brain up and then go on autopilot, and then I'm good. But we changed gears to do the solo shows, which again is very big difference between doing bus shows to then jumping in like a car and driving across Europe. Like we were just driving everywhere. Driving. I think during that entire tour, we went through Germany like 4 times. We just kept going.
Was it just the 2 of you in a rental car?
2 of us and the tour manager. So it was 3 of us and 3 of us driving across Europe. And so it was.
Did you
just
have a splitter or a car? Like a van or a car?
No, just a very large SUV. But that's all we needed, because we were only driving a few hours to like this next place, and then you're like, cool, whatever. And then it was like, we're in Italy, and then it's drive a few hours here. Okay, we're in France now. Okay, cool.
So we were just driving.
But it was, to me, it was amazing, because I actually got to, like, I love to be in a place and see a place. And, I love the places we were staying at were kind of like the small town outside the place. It was just like these absolutely gorgeous settings. So I was obviously having a great time. It was much more wearing because there was more driving. It wasn't too much downtime. And I was just, singing a lot, and it was really hot. It was like an unbelievable heat wave that particular tour, because Europe was just going through, global warming stuff, ace, woo. But then it was after that 2-week tour of just like bang, bang, bang. And again, it was me playing the show, going out, saying hi to fans. Then Billy had his set, and he had a break. He had 2 sets that he did. So I'd sing with him, then he'd take a break, and then I'd go out to the merch area again and wave at people again. And then he'd play his other set. And when he was playing his other set, then I could finally sort of like shut down my internal computer in my brain and be like, cool.
Start
like
updating your website.
Exactly. Exactly. If I had Wi-Fi. And that was kind of the thing. It was just like, go. Okay, now we're off this tour and we're back doing festivals again. So it was, right. And then it was changing gears back to that again. And like Billy is incredible in terms of his memory to be able to shift to these things. But for me, I'm like, I have a pretty good memory. Like I'm good at stuff, but it's still like watching him go through again. He's still changing gears. I'm playing his stuff, playing his brand new acoustic record to then shift back to play festivals, and he just does it like, oh, it's no biggie, because it's no biggie for him perhaps, but for me it's like, right. You know, I'm garnering these new fans in these places. Like any time I get to play my stuff in front of you know, a crowd where a good chunk of people know who I am already, like, wow, like that's a huge gift. I sold out of all the merch I brought with me on the road, which was incredible.
That's great
I know,
problem.
But that's the thing. I brought a big suitcase full of stuff, and by the time I got home, there was, I think, a CD left. I don't know, a T-shirt. I don't know. There wasn't. It was gone. All the stuff I brought with me was gone. It was heavy. Yeah. I've been lucky. I've been able to do these things, but I am learning the biggest skill aside from the music thing, because otherwise why are you there if you can't do the music part of things? There's no point in you being there, is to be adaptive. So I'm the adaptive guy. Hi, how's it going?
I think I probably would. Clearly, you're much more professional than I am, but I would have probably said no straight away to the opening the gig in Oslo, because I would have been so terrified of. I'm one of these assholes that if I have if a weird thing, I'm over it now, but it used to be that if a weird thing happened to me during a show, that's all I could think about. I couldn't think about the 178 great things other than that happened. I would be so focused on the thing that I thought ruined the show, that if I had one of those experiences with my own performance, it would have tainted my performance with the Pumpkins.
I think once I did the initial run through before I said yes officially, I was like half yes, give me an hour, half yes, if that's a thing. Definitely maybe. Once I did my just run through, I was like, and all the songs were there. I just did the autopilot thing of run through, and I was like, oh, this is cool. This is fine. I did sound check right away. And basically it was like after sound check, there was only like 15 minutes, and then it was just like on, go live.
We didn't really have time to.
I didn't have time to fail. Like if I went through my run through and it just like sucked, and I was just like, nah, this is hard. Or my brain was having one of those days where I hadn't slept enough and it just wasn't firing all engines or whatever, I would have just been like.
Did you say that was the first show? Yeah.
So of the tour.
Mm-hmm. So that means you flew from, where do you guys rehearse? Chicago or LA?
Oh, no. We were still in Europe, and we'd been rehearsing in Europe.
Oh, okay.
So we had been rehearsing in
you were over the jet
US
lag.
And then I was over the jet lag. I mean, right. Well, for the most part. Right. Yeah. I mean, it still sticks with you for a bit, but yeah, I wasn't grappling with that. I was just grappling with, do I know this? Do I know this material enough? Do I know that material enough? And once I got up there and did my thing, chatted to the crowd and did my performance thing, and, you know, won the crowd over as much as I could, they knew who I was. And again, I'm playing Americana acoustic music to a rock crowd. Like I'm aware of that is literally rolling the, I'm aware of how wrong that could have gone, knowing that the opening band that pulled out were like a metal band.
Really?
They were totally a metal band.
That's great.
But it was that thing of, they're either going to like it, love it, or be indifferent. I'm probably not going to get booed because they know who I am. I'm also going to introduce myself and tell them again who I am. I'm associated with the band, so please don't hate me, you know. So I did that thing, and I kept chatting with the crowd, and kept, with the casual crowd. I'm chatty over the microphone. You may have noticed. I'm chatty, so it was fine. Like once I got through the first couple of songs and realized that was going to be fine, I was like, fine. And then it was just getting off stage and literally going, oh, I've got to quickly change, and I've got to, there's like 20 minutes till the show.
I guess what I meant to say was that you don't strike me as the kind of person who would have the kind of experience that I would have. Like, you would find the best uh, things from your experience, and that would be your experience. Like, because as soon as the show's over, you got a bunch of other shit to do.
Yeah, no. Honestly, I don't think you're. It's not. You're not misquoting yourself or me, but to say I would find. I just think you have to go. Well, I have to go do this show now.
Right.
I don't think you don't have a. You don't even have that time to go. Was it a good show? Was it bad? Did I book? You just go. I have to, like, I literally have to go change my outfit and change the entire set list I'm about to play. Go quickly play piano a few times. You've just been playing guitar, which that's not the thing that you're doing on tour for the most part. You know, that you just do it. You have to change gears. You have to change. You don't have time for self-critical doubt. You don't have that. That's not a luxury you have at that particular time. You can do it after the show. Right. Like literally at the end of the night when it's done,
you can scream into your pillow.
I remember Jimmy saying during one of the arena tours in 2018, I think it was one of the first shows that we did, you know, like it was like someone was saying like, it's going to be a great show. Jimmy was like, you know what, you know, by midnight or whatever, whether it's good or bad, it's going to be over. Right. It was something like that. It was just like good or bad, you know, whatever it is in 90 minutes time or an hour. We're going to have played. You know, it was just taking the emotion out of it and just being like, he's just jimmying the situation. Can't explain. I've obviously learned so much from all those guys, from, you know, James, Jimmy, Jeff, Jack Bates was on bass for the last couple of tours, incredible player too. But I've learned so much from just those guys and how relaxed they are. I mean, obviously they know exactly what they're doing. They're extremely skilled, but how to handle the situation of being on stage. They don't overanalyze. They do the best job they possibly can. And at all times they're all on. Like nobody's phoning anything in. Like no matter what anyone would even conceive as a thought, like those guys are literally going for it every song. Like me looking over, I'm sitting, you know, right across from Jimmy and he's gunning it.
Doesn't like, it suck when you go to see a band and you can tell their heart is not in it?
Yeah, that's a bummer. Like, honestly, I haven't seen that many shows where I'm looking over and I'm like, no, they're not there. They're not even there, like mentally. Right. I would be totally bummed out. But you look at the faces of these guys when they're on stage and they're going for it. I don't think I have any memories where anyone's just kind of like, cool. I'm very, very lucky, but I've learned a lot from those guys. They're great. And I've applied so much of what I've learned. Like I get better as a musician doing these sorts of tours too. And then I can come back and go, well, you know, I like this or I like that, or I can apply it to music, or I find new music to listen to based on what they're listening to. And like, I'm just so lucky to be surrounded by just these incredible humans. And I, again, like, as you know, like I have new music coming out. And again, like those people that think, oh, maybe I wouldn't like it because it's not alternative music. I'm lucky enough that like being on all these tours, like I've had so many alternative media, like news outlets and things like that, grab a hold of what I'm doing because I'm related to the Smashing Pumpkins.
Right.
And kind of they've elevated me to that point of like some of the alternative news outlets are giving me, whether it's unknowing publicity, but I'll welcome it. Like, and there's been times over the last few years where I've had something out in American Songwriter and Alternative Nation at the same time. And I'm like, I look at it and I'm like,
good songs, right? Good songs are good songs, and how they are delivered.
That's kind of it. And like I have continued to run like songs on my YouTube channel where I cut, because there's only so much of my songs that I can throw at people being like, listen to this. You can't do that to people. People will get to know who you are and what you do through what you show them. And I've always showcased in either versions of my songs or versions of cover songs. And my YouTube channel is full of just versions of me playing just every song in the book, pretty much.
It's great. I'm going to put a link
artist
to that in the description so that folks can get over there and if they are not aware of you, they can get on that because it's really great.
Well, it's fun. It's fun in the respect that you can go, well, this song was originally by, I don't know, maybe it's like I've got acoustic versions of like the Beatles and Otis Redding, and I've done a entire series based on alternative songs and made them more sort of Americana. And a great song's a great song, and once you sort of scale it back and show people a different interpretation of a song, you go, oh, okay. Right. Then you're more willing to hear another song. Once you hear that performance and that vocal, you're more willing to sort of take on board something else they've got to offer that may be something you're unfamiliar with, but like, oh, I liked that, maybe I'll like something else. I don't know. I just try and show people a little bit of the eclectic nature of what's inspired me or what continues to inspire me, or even just like, can I even do this song? Like one of my series was producer's choice from that. I said to Howard Willie, my producer, I'm like, give me a list of songs, because otherwise I'll just keep randomly choosing songs. Give me a list of songs. So he sent me like an Apple podcast list, and I was like, oh my God, I can't even play half these songs, because it was, I don't know, it was like Nat King Cole, and there was a Bing Crosby song on there, but then there was also like Brian Ferry. Like there was a bunch of like literally everything. So, I mean, the Cars, like there was a little bit of everything. And I was like, and Nick Drake, and I was like, and you go through that thing, because it usually only takes me 10, 15 minutes to work out a song, because I'm quick like that. And like some of these songs, it was like hours just working out the best way to play it. Do I play it on keys? Do I play it here? Do I play it there and that inversion? You do that thing, but it makes you a better musician, but it makes you go strip back a song again to that, what makes the song great. And I love that so much. It's so great.
Well, I'm going to wrangle you to be in a Couch Riffs video, right?
Oh, I hope so.
I'm going to send you that playlist, and it is largely populated with 80s stuff.
Okay,
but
I'm in.
Not just, when people think of 80s music, like, to me, Jane's Addiction is an 80s band, and,
yep.
So is The Church. I mean,
yep.
So it is largely populated by 80s music. So is Iron Maiden.
Excellent. Well, I've got to give myself one more shout out before, I don't know when we're wrapping up, but
I wish you would. Yeah.
I have aside from a single coming out, I have another show on Staged coming up on October 24th. Because I do some shows that are shows on Stage It, which is an online platform for live musicians. And I love it because it creates, it's not just like being on Facebook or Instagram where you can instantly kind of change the channel and be like, I want to watch something else now. You sort of feel inspired to stay there and have a concert experience.
Right.
And like I'll interact in the chat room, and I can see people chatting amongst themselves and what they're saying, and it's all real time. And I kind of dig it a lot. But I do one of those shows every month, and my one coming up this month is Halloween themed. I've done 2 80s shows. I've done a 70s show. I've done a soul show. I've done songs from movies. Like the last 80s show I did, I ended up throwing in songs from like Back to the Future, and like nice. People request songs. So like I saw a request from somebody. It was like that song from the Goonies from Cyndi Lauper, and I was like, oh God. But I learned it. It was ace.
What was the Cyndi Lauper song in Goonies?
It was the Goonies, A Good Enough song.
I only saw that movie for the first time this summer.
I'm sure it didn't age well.
It was great. It was great. It was really great.
But people, like, I've learned if I do things like these types of shows where people request stuff and I make it a theme and make it a thing, it becomes less of me just playing my songs at people. It's like we all get to just kind of hang out together and listen to some me playing these versions of songs and chatting. And
well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
in a Halloween theme, and you don't have to give it all away if it's a secret, but in a Halloween themed show, is it that you're dressed up, or is it that
No,
all
I'm
the
playing song.
songs?
No, it's the songs. It's the songs. I mean, I might dress up. I've not decided yet. I have a little bit of time to work that out. But I've had a couple of requests, but I've pretty much just put together a playlist because there's really only like 4 songs you think of when you think of Halloween songs. But I thought I've just picked songs that, you know, aside from like a few really obvious ones, like the song from Ghostbusters, and just apart from that, and like I'm gonna play
Monster
a couple of
Mash.
I'm going to play a couple of the obvious ones, but I'm throwing in songs that might have like the word ghost or something dead in the title, and just
Pet
good songs
Sematary?
from like. Um, hmm.
It's a Ramones song.
No, I'm trying to think of what I actually put in my short list as well.
I mean, you could just do a set of. You could just do a set of Misfits songs, pretty much.
No, but that's the thing. It's once you actually go down that path and go, what could I play? You start to go, oh. But then I remember, like everything and like all these shows, to play a little bit of something for everybody from every era. So like I'm gonna throw in like a song from the Cranberries, like Zombie, like just stuff that is kind of. Yeah. Of the theme, and then throw in like the real hammy sort of ones too. But basically it's just going to be a really fun hang. So I tell people, like, if you, it's super easy and convenient to watch stuff on Instagram and Facebook, but I really tell people, and I've had so many fans come over that I've said, look, just come to one of my shows or hitch a ride. Like, my shows are $1. They're not expensive. You can tip as well, which people do, which yay, because, you know, yay, groceries. But
groceries good.
Yeah, grocery good,
rent
not
good.
Groceries bad. I always tell people, once you actually come over and watch a show, I bet you anything you'll come back and watch, even if it's not my show, you'll watch someone else's show on the platform because it sounds better as well. Like I plug in, and I've done shows on just about every platform, and it sounds way better there. And if it comes to visual or sound, I'm going with sound. I don't care what anyone says. If it sounds good, everything else is good. And I've done shows on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, and they just don't, I don't know what you want to call it, but like when they buffer it like that little bit, and you just like, it sounds warbly, and you're like, there's something wrong with it. Just, it's weird to me. I want it to translate well.
Of course. Yeah.
So yeah, that's 24th of October, but I'll send you some links for that. So
I'll make sure to plug that in the intro for the podcast as well, and put a link.
And I will have, aside from the song Hands Tied coming out this Friday, which will be the 16th, so it'll be out by the time this comes out, I'm sure. I actually have a video that'll be coming out. But in the meantime, once this song's out, please obviously go to Spotify and listen to this song at least 1,000 times each and run up all my numbers, and that would be fantastic. Cheers.
There will be much glory in it for you. And listening.
Huzzah.
Yeah. There was one other thing that I saw, to bring it all back around to the beginning of the conversation, and that was a thing that I read in your bio, and I think it was in your bio, unless it's not uncommon for me to completely screw up timelines, but I swear this was in your bio, that said, you don't have to get it right, you just have to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think that those are words to live by, and I think those are things that I'm constantly reminding myself that, because I will think about shit until, and keep myself awake. Well, I'm pretty good at sleeping, but I'll sleep nervously. And
successful sleeper.
For sure. Once you get started, then you figure out how to make your adjustments, right?
Exactly. And so many nerves and anticipation revolve around that. I want it to be perfect. It's like, nothing's ever perfect. Are you kidding me? Like, it just never is. And you know, whether you're like the craftsman, like if you have your thing down to an art or whatever, you know that there's always room for improvement. Like, the craftsman in you is never satisfied. So knowing that, even if you know exactly what you're doing, or you rehearsed, or you've done this thing, or whatever it is, even as you're doing it, you'll still find ways to make it better, and you'll come back and assess and analyze. And that's a good artist. I mean, I think I remember reading a quote. It was like a quote between like Kanye and Jimi Hendrix. It's something like that. And it was like one of those things. I can't remember what the Kanye quote was. It was something about being a genius or something funny like that. And Jimi Hendrix is like, I don't even think that I'm that good of a guitarist or whatever. And it was like something super humbling from someone that was clearly, an icon for his generation and still generations, because people go back to concerts that he's played, live concerts, and be like, what was he doing? Like, how do I work that out? Like the way that he played, it was just so much passion and, and again, like playing his guitar basically upside down and back to front, because that's, he was, left-handed and he didn't have the guitar the way that he, you just work it out.
Right.
You work it out. That's really it. You just get started and you work it out. You'll find out. And if you don't know what it is, you'll find someone that will help you work it out. And that should be your very awkward philosophy in life. It's like you are never going to be.
How much are your life coach fees?
Yes.
I'll add a link there as well. I appreciate it. I need one.
Yes. Excellent. No, I appreciate you taking the time to read my really long bio.
No, it was great. I really appreciate you taking as much time to speak with me, and I'm excited for your single to come out.
Cheers.
Looking forward to when your video comes out. Make sure to send me a link, and I'll share that as well. And I'm going to send you this playlist. We're going to pick a song.
Okay. Cheers.
And I released, here's the funny thing. These videos that I do, because I'm dealing with, 4, 5, 6 people, they take months. Yep. I mean, underneath this hat, I have a page boy bob right now. And I was editing a video the other day and I had a Marine Corps haircut. Like I had a high-end tight when I shot my bass part. And so these things take some time. But, I have a new system. And hopefully we can get one out before the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, keep me posted. Let's work it out.
Awesome.
I'm excited to work on something. It'll be fun.
It's going to be really fun.
But thank you very much for having me on the show and listening to some of my story and my weird turn left to turn right sort of situations. But it's all, this is all one of those sort of weird journeys that, I suppose I've never been locked into one path. And I think a lot of creative people feel that way. They're always told, like, you find that one thing and just do it. And it's like, I'm not that example. I've always done like 10 things at once and kept doing them all.
Right.
But if one takes preference and one takes priority, just, go for that. But I think, for creative people, this is a great thing to be able to share these types of stories. I appreciate it. And I'm going to go back and listen to a few other podcasts that you've done too and hear some other stories because, I like to hear.
The best ones I don't say very much. Those are always the best ones.
Yeah.
Honest.
Nope. No, that's not true. You'll ask a lot of the right questions.
So thank you. I really appreciate you taking so much time. I know I told you that we would be maybe an hour or a little bit more, but
that's cool.
Generously giving me a lot of time.
Time is subjective.
It's not even real, man.
No, but seriously, I appreciate it, and look forward to this being released, so I can give it a big plug out there, and keep doing what you're doing, all 75 jobs that you do.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, cheers. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right, bye.